You are golden, you are good enough, like your fire from within. You're inspired, you inspire us, it's gonna be all good again.
I'm Brianna, your host for the Roar Indie Author Interview Series. These mini podcasts are brought to you by the Mama Knows Not a Podcast, as well as iFrig Publishing, which strives to embody and to capture their mission, good for our kids, good for our earth, and good for our communities in each work they publish. Books in the iFrig family also promote social and environmental consciousness and empower children as they grow in their communities. Today, we have a Roar author with us. This is Crystel Patterson. She has written several books that will be highlighted and featured in the vending machines as well as on the Roar website. So, Crystel, thank you so much for being part of this. I know there's a couple works that you have done, so I'm so stoked to talk to you about them. What inspired you to be an author at all?
Yeah, I think it was, my children and just everything happening in the world, where I got my inspiration. I started writing in 2020. We were in the middle of a pandemic, but not just that. There was a social justice crisis happening. And you may not realize it at the time, but like our young children were actually feeling it and seeing what was happening and quite frankly, understanding what was happening. And they were curious and wanted to learn. And so that was the case for my son, who was 8 at the time. And he started asking some questions after George Floyd was murdered specifically. And he asked me, why do police keep killing Black people? And to hear that question from an 8-year-old and to hear the syntax of the question really did a number on me, because I'm like, he has been paying attention to ask the question in that way. Why do police keep killing Black people? That's a loaded question, and it lets you see right away, this is not the first time he's noticed it. This is just the first time he's actually asked me about it. And so that scared me. And absolutely. I'm like, Jesus, I don't want my child to be worried about that and worried about possibly if that could be him one day, because he's a Black person too, right? And right now he's a child, but like soon he'll be a young man. And so that's where my mind went. Like, I don't want him to be obsessing with what if that's my reality. And that scared me, right? That's what my child had to focus on. And a few days later, I was having a bed night routine with him and my younger son, who was 3 at the time. And something just clicked as we were reading the book that my younger son wanted to read. He was pretty much reading it to us because he had the book memorized at that point. It was his favorite book, Good Night Construction Site. And he was reciting it to my older son and I. And it just, it clicked for me that like, this is a book that he will always remember. He might be 3 now, but he will always remember this book, just like some of the books I read when I was really young. I still remember. And I think the reason why he'll remember it is because it's a fun story. It's memorable, and it just gives you a good feeling all around, right? But the problem is with that book is that there's no real message in that book other than it just makes you feel really good before you go to bed. But what is the true message in the book? It's about construction vehicles, not about real people. And what is the actual message? So it occurred to me in that moment that there could be a need for more stories that are about real people, that told real messages, but were written in this same type of fun and memorable feel-good way, so that children are going to want to read it and want to come back to it. But it actually uplifted these positive stories of real people, so that children who are obsessing with what's all the bad stuff that's happening, it can be balanced out with some good, right? They can see some of the good things that are happening to Black people, or Black people are creating their own narratives, right? That's not one that I'm a victim or all the negative stuff, right? And so it right away it clicked. I need to write something. Like there might be some books out there. If I search really hard, I could find a book like that, but there's not enough. So I'm going to give it a shot, and I'm going to try to write a book series, not just one book, a book series, because there's no limit to these stories that exist out there that need to be told. So I'm going to write a book series that will be meant to uplift children and inspire them and have a real source of inspiration behind people who are actually Black, so that they can be able to see, wow, here's another perspective of Black people thriving and not necessarily being victims.
I love that in so many ways, because I think also what you're doing with these stories, and we'll get into what they are in a minute, is talking about really heavy and traumatic situations and giving not only more voice and context, but making it accessible to younger kids who are being faced with these very difficult and complex situations, and helping them understand. I think that is really important, because I mean, just think about the silly questions like young 4 or 5 year olds ask, and
Right.
you're like, how do I put this into a way that it's like a stepping stone, you know, because you don't come out and teach a kid algebra, right?
Right.
You got to go 1 + 1 is 2, and then you build on that, so that by the time the kids are older, it's like they've already been exposed to certain things and understanding
Right.
social injustice history and why things have shifted and they need to change, and where there's been issues and the way our whole society has been constructed, and dismantling those and reestablishing things. Like, you don't want them to walk into a history class and be surprised, like about and about anything, but like specifically our history and how it's kind of culminated. So I think that is brilliant. And then you can take all those little, you know, subtopics and like, you know, educate and inform and show, which I also think is really vital and important, you know, positive role models and positive examples and thriving, you know, cultures and communities, you know. I always say, like, I never had to worry about seeing a white girl or a blonde hair, blue eye girl on TV. I never thought twice about it. I always had that. But there's a lot of kids of different colors and cultures who never have had that. So I think, and as from my perspective, I want those books in my household too. So my son he sees everybody just the way we all deserve to be seen. So I don't know, that when you're talking about that, I'm like, that makes me so happy because I can't tell that story. So I'm glad you're telling that story. I think that's awesome. So let's talk a bit about your stories. What book or books, because I know you've said you've written a few, are part of this Roar author series?
Yeah, so right now I have 4 because I just added one more to the series over the holiday break. So that one's not included yet. Hopefully it will be. But the other 3 are. And so my first book was called 1 Flip, 2 Flip, 3 Flip, 4. And that is the book inspired by Gabby Douglas, the Olympic gymnast. And it's a story to inspire children to dream big and letting them know they can do anything they set their mind to. It's a completely universal message. It has nothing to do with race. To me, it's all about exposure, right? It doesn't matter who you see on the cover of the book, whether they're black, brown, yellow, whatever they are, but it's the message in there that you want to take away. But you are just now being exposed to the fact that, okay, someone that looks that color can do that too, right? And I can do that too. Put your own lens on it, right? So that's one thing I'll say about my books. They're not very race driven. It's all about exposing kids to seeing representation, right, of other cultures, specifically Blacks, in the books. So the second book that's in the vending machines is called I Am Different. And this is a book that, oh man, teachers, the schools really, really love this book because I guess it's something that students are really dealing with, just like appreciating differences in themselves and others. And it's inspired by a young lady named Karis Rogers, who used to get bullied for her dark skin complexion and decided to start her own clothing line that would uplift people who were dealing with similar struggles. So all these positive affirmations type clothing. And so quite young, I think it was the age of 10, she started this clothing line. At the age of 11, she was like the youngest person to ever be featured on New York Fashion Week for her clothing line. So I just feel like her story is so inspirational, and it's a story that really is meant to inspire children to just love and embrace all the things that make them different and just not try to make everybody happy. There's always going to be somebody that has something to say that's not going to be positive, and you just got to not pay too much attention to that, right? Like, so it puts that
absolutely
out there. And hopefully the children who are on the other side, who may be the ones making fun and teasing all the time, hopefully this kind of shows them, you know, another way to go about just interacting with people and showing them some empathy, right? For others.
Yeah.
And then the third book was, it's called Superheroes Here and There. And that one is inspired by Chadwick Boseman. And he is the actor who played the Black Panther in Marvel, Wakanda. Black Panther, and then there was a Wakanda, and he wasn't there for Wakanda because he had passed away. But he passed away, and I was just very intrigued by his story. And him being an actor on screen, portraying all these icons, historical Black icons, but also being like the first real like Black superhero on TV that was like legit. Like he stands up against all these other superheroes, right? And we were proud of that. But while he was playing all those roles, he was battling cancer and he was dying and he didn't tell anyone, right? And so you start being curious about what he was like as like a real person. And I started researching him, and what I found was that in real life, he was actually showing up as a superhero too, right? He was doing a lot of brave and bold things for the culture, and just like for just equity and pay and work and all that. Like he was just doing a lot. And I just saw a lot of traits in him that I feel like would resonate with children, and learning about everyday heroes and maybe teaching them how to be an everyday hero too. So I wrote that book to just really inspire children to recognize and appreciate those everyday heroes around us, but also maybe try to embody those traits, and you show up as a hero to someone as well. So those are the books in the vending machines so far.
Well, I feel like I could go down like a million rabbit holes with you right now, but I won't. But I really want to. Because maybe another podcast for another day. But I think that is that's beautiful. Like, shouldn't the messages be universal? Aren't we all human? So I love that.
Right.
And I find, just as a tangent, I find Chadwick Boseman just absolutely fascinating, because just, again, similar thing, like started researching him and I was like, oh my God, this guy is incredible. Like, you know, like I almost feel sad that, you know, he got so big right at the end, like at his end.
Right.
Like I know he's such a, it's like, oh man, there's so much he was doing, and he had so much more to give, you know, for us to learn from, and to give, and he was teaching so many things. So I think I'm excited for that book the most, personally.
Yeah. The good thing about him is like he knew that he completed his assignment. Like he was okay with that. There was an interview that he did before he died where they asked him what happens in the next Black Panther, and he said, "I'm dead," and no one knew what he meant then. But he knew what he meant. Like, and he was okay. He was completely at peace with that. Like, because he knew what he did. He did a lot of good. I'm getting emotional just talking about it.
No, me too. I just got.
You know what?
And this is why we talk.
Here to accomplish, and that has to feel good, right? Even though you know what's to come, that has to feel good knowing that you did what you were put here to do. So, yeah.
Mm-hmm. I mean, how many of us are lost in searching for our purpose? And
exactly.
And there he is, being just like the whole embodiment of strength, charisma, empathy, you know, solace. Like,
Yep. And
so many
that's
rabbit
what
holes.
I want our children. That's what I want them to see and cling on to. I don't want them to cling on to the fact that a Black man got his life taken away from him unjustly so, right? I don't want them to focus on that. I want them to focus on these stories and learn about this. And these are the stories that should be amplified and be all over the news, like, but they're not, right? So, that's my motivation.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I love it. So for the series that you've created so far, what age group is it best for?
As the series 3 to 8, they are picture books, not board books. And I feel like after 8, they're more into chapter books. So 3 to 8 is a broad range. Some of the books in the series are more towards the lower age range, and then some of them are more pushed towards the upper age range of that range. So.
Okay, cool. That's I'm asking personally, but also for listeners. What does it mean for you to be part of a project like Roar and the Golden Ticket Reading Initiative?
It's just another way to keep fighting the fight to get like indie authors, self-published authors, the recognition and visibility that they need, because that is the biggest challenge in this as a self-published author. Is I've written this book.
Yep.
I know the value it will add. I know the people who have had a chance to experience the book. I know the impact it's having on them, but how do I break through and expose it to the masses? And I think this is one other way to help with that, of just getting visibility that doesn't come very easily.
No, it doesn't come very easily. And I would just have to echo what you're saying. There's so many good stories out there, and there's so many good writers, and there's so many stories that need to be amplified, like what you said, lifted up, that should be out there, that we should be talking about, that we should be excited about. And it's like, well, how do we get them out there? Like, let's do this.
If your name is not like somebody really famous that the minute they drop a book, everyone runs out to go get it. Yeah, it's very hard, because there's so many books out there. Like, how does your little book stand out? How do you get them to know about your book, right? So that's the biggest challenge in this. And I think with what iFrig Publishing is doing with the random acts of reading and the vending machines, I think that will help tremendously.
I agree with that. I'm happy to be a part of it myself. Now, what advice would you share for an aspiring writer?
I'm gonna be like Nike and say, just do it. Like, literally, just do it. Don't let anybody tell you that how you're going about it is wrong. Like, make up your own rules as you go. Like, just do it. Just do it. Like, I will tell you that my background is in engineering, and I never felt or would define myself as a writer in any way, shape, or form before 2020, right? Like, I was always math and science driven. I was always a good student in school. So, like, if I had to write a paper, I would do a really good job at it, right? I can write, but I never got satisfaction or fulfillment out of writing. But my son asking me this question was like a motivation, like it was a push. And now all of a sudden I love writing, right? Because of the reason why I'm doing it. So I guess the other thing is, don't force it. Find a thing that you actually want to write about, and that will help you tremendously, because now you're going to feel so fulfilled from doing it. But just do it. Just do your research. There's a lot of information out there that you can figure out what you need to do it, and just get going. When I decided that night when I was reading to my kids, and it clicked to me, this is what I wanted to do. The very next thing I did after I tucked them in was I called my husband, who hadn't come home yet, and I told him, this is what I want to do. And the reason why I told him that is because I wanted someone to tell me, hey, you didn't do what you said you were going to do if I didn't do it. I felt that sure about, like, this is what I needed to do, that I wanted somebody to at least hold me accountable and to just do it. Because so many times we have ideas, I want to do this, and then life gets in the way and you get too busy and you don't do it, right? So I guess I would say just do it, and maybe find a way to keep yourself accountable so that you actually get to the end.
I love all of that. You have said some very brilliant and poignant things that I cannot wait to like package up. I'm so excited.
Thank you.
Where can people find more about you and your books?
Yeah, I do have a website. Crystel Patterson. It's literally first name, last name, like it's spelled on the screen. CrystelPatterson.com. And my books are available for purchase on my website. There's a lot of information on my books about me, my mission, what I'm trying to do. I've had several opportunities to talk about what I'm doing, like on news and certain platforms like that. So you can find some of those on there as well. And yeah, that's where you would go. I'm also on social media. I'm on Instagram mostly. So my Instagram is at inspired to be underscore CP, my initials. And the inspired to be is spelled just like the book series, inspired TOBE underscore CP. So I'm trying to be very active and make sure that folks know what's going on with me, where I'm at, because I'm always in the streets trying to promote my books. So I'm always letting folks know where I'm going to be, in case folks want to meet me and talk to me, buy the books directly from me like that, have me sign the books. And so I try to keep that very active. So definitely follow me on there as well if you're active on social media.
Awesome. I love it. Crystel, thank you so much for being part of the Roar Indie Author interview series. I'm your host, Brianna. This is sponsored by iFreak Publishing. Again, you can find Crystel at crystelpatterson.com. We will put that in the notes of this as well. People can click through. And until next time, we hope you're having